Okay, so far we have a list of our courses. A student can log in, go to their profile, and also they can look at sections that have been created for that particular course. They can go in and navigate to a particular course and see the sections that have been created for that particular course. So for instance, here we have 3 sections that have been created for this course. Obviously, notice that over here we can also create the sections. That would be for and admin, right? So this would not be for students cannot create their own sections. So admins can create sections, but they should not be able to enroll in any one of them. And students should be able to just enroll, but not create sections. So that needs to be implemented as well. So a student might come here and click on enroll and actually create an entry in the database saying that this particular student is enrolled in this particular section. I believe we had just started on that. We had more or less completed the implementation of adding sections. Obviously, there's more to do there, as being able to close a section, right? Just remove a section, or even update a section, perhaps change the name of the section, or maybe add seats, or make it so that we can have other folks adding, be able to register for that course. But that, again, that would be an admin's use case, right? Obviously, students could not be increase their own seats, but they certainly could enroll, and they also should be able to unenroll, right? And where would they should be able to unenroll, for instance, from the profile page, right? They should be able to come here, enroll, and then once they enroll, perhaps in their particular profile page, they should see a list of all the sections that they have enrolled in, right? Maybe the name of the section, maybe perhaps the name of the course, and from there, perhaps they could unenroll from their particular profile page. Make sense? So this is a list of all the sections for that particular course, of which they would be enrolled in just one of them. Let's see, what else? So if I log in as somebody, as Poe, here the profile right now is just showing my username, and perhaps my personal information would be here. And also here would be listed data that is related to me, such as sections that I have enrolled. Yes, would be listed here, or any content that is related to me. Right? In this particular case, is sections. I have created an enrollment in a particular section. So let's see where we can do that. I believe on the server side, we had started working on the enrollment, and we had created this schema for the enrollments. We had mentioned that there were a couple of alternatives of how to do this. One of them was to use the classical mapping strategy, right, where you have somewhat references to 2 records or 2 documents. In this case, we have references to a student, and we have references to a section, saying that this particular student is enrolled in this particular section. Right? There's a very classical way of implementing these. These would be considered foreign keys. These would be the values of section and student would be primary keys, right? The actual unique identifiers of those records, which we can then use to join and actually fetch the actual section or the actual student. Although Mongo doesn't support that natively, of being able to join things. You could do a query where you could say, okay, well, give me all the students where, if I have the ID, give me the student, or if I have the ID of the section, give me that section. But there's no join per se, right? So for those of us who miss the capability of joining 2 tables or 2 collections, Mongoose gives us that capability of using the keyword or the method of populate, right, which somewhat behaves somewhat like a join. All right, and we'll have a chance to play around with that today. Okay. All right. So here we have. Let's start with the schema. And notice that the fields can either be a primitive data type. For instance, grade here is a string, right? But you can specify if you need to specify more than just the data type. Okay, you can specify by, instead of providing the data type, the primitive data type, you can specify an actual object, a configuration object. Right? So for instance, this string here, right, this configuration of saying that this field is a string, we could have instead done something like this. We could have provided an actual object saying that the type is string. This is the equivalent. Okay, this is the equivalent of providing an object that configures that field. And you can do certain things like we can say that the default is an A. Everybody gets an A by default, right? If you don't specify this field, that's the default value. You can put other things, right? So you can say that it's if it's numeric, then it has a minimum, it has a maximum, it has all sorts of things you can configure here. Okay, you can specify validation, right? That it meets a particular regular expression. Right? You can do all sorts of things with this configuration. But for grade, we're not doing anything. So there's a shortcut where you just specify the data type. If you just specify the data type, you can just say this. You can just specify the data type. Make sense? Right? Now for the other ones, section and student, those are somewhat special in that they're going to be using. Let me break this up a little bit. They're going to be holding a value that is a primary key. Okay, it's a unique identifier. So we have to specify it this way: type, Mongo schema types dot object ID. That's a type, and object ID is the type of the unique identifier, right? That Mongo generates for us, right? All the underscore IDs, right? Those unique identifiers. That's their data type, right? Object ID. So that's the value that we're going to store in student. But additionally, we are configuring saying that this primary key or this foreign key is referencing objects of this particular type, right? And this is what is going to allow Mongoose to go and fetch that other object. Fetch me that other object. Okay, what we're going to refer to as like a join, right? It's going to be able to join these two things together. Okay, all right. So we have the enrollment schema, and what we're looking to do is to implement this use case, right? That I wanted to go into enroll. I'm logged in as Poe, and I want to click on one of these sections. And presumably the server already knows who I am because I'm logged in, yes? So I wouldn't have to pass in my user ID, right? So the server already knows in the session who I am. I would need to pass the section that I want to enroll. Depending on on which section I want to enroll, I would pass the section to the server. And the server would enter a record, an object saying, hey, this student is enrolled in this section. Yes? So let's work on that. Let's see. So from the client's point of view, I need to handle this event handler, right? That if I click on enroll, let's see that, and that would be in the section list component, right? So we have that in the section. Let's see. Let's go to the client. Here's the client. Let's see. We have section list. There's section list, and let's see if we have anything there. We have in the HTML. We are. Here we have the enrollment button. See that? That's the enrollment button. That ugly enrollment button. Let's make it a little prettier. Let's do class, and this is a btn, and let's do primary. So it's nice and blue. So it renders in blue, and maybe we can push it all the way to the right-hand side. We can say float to the right. These are all classes in the Bootstrap, right? CSS library. All right, so it looks a little prettier, and we need to notify our component that the student wants to enroll in that section, right? So we can handle that by declaring an event handler. We'll say click, and we want to invoke in our component. We're going to say, well, we want to enroll. Okay, we don't have it implemented just yet, and we're going to pass in the section object, right? Notice that we're iterating over the sections, yes? And we're going to pass the whole section object. We could pass the ID also. We could just pass the ID, but let's pass the entire section object. And notice that Angular knows which section object to pass, right? It will render 3 sections But if you click on any one of them, right, it'll know to pass this section or that other section, whichever section it is. It's nice and magical. All right, so that's on the client side, on the templates. On the controller side, or the component side, we need to listen for that incoming. We need to listen for that incoming event, and so let's declare here the event handler. So this will be enroll, and that takes as argument the actual section we want to enroll in. Right, and for now, let's do an alert and make sure that we are in there. Let's enroll in this particular ID. All right, so let's try it out. If I do enroll, says that's the ID I want to enroll. Notice that's 5B2 something or other. But if I click on this other one, I would be enrolled in 5B2 and ends with 9CC. Right, so I have the ID of the section that I want to enroll in. Right, I have that. And so where would I do that? Not in the controller, not in the component, right? We don't handle data manipulation in the components, right? We delegate that to a service. The service is the one who handles all data communication. So let's do that. Let's delegate this to a service. In this case, is the section service. So we can remove that. Actually, let me. Let's see, status. So we just modified the HTML and the TS. I'm going to create a branch where we're going to do all the work for today, right? So that you can follow along. So all the work will be in this branch. So the git check out dash B. So today would be M6L3, right? So that's so the third lesson in module 6. All right, so we have all our work will be in that branch. If you want to follow along in a branch. All right, so we have the section. We're going to delegate this to the service. So this dot service, and will be enroll is student in section, right? And we'll pass in the section on this dot. Underscore ID. So we pass in the ID. Now, obviously, this doesn't exist yet. We need to implement that at the service level. Yes? So let's do that. At the service level, the service client, we need to handle that right here. Right? So we'll do something like, what do we call it? Enroll student in section. And we have the section ID. Notice that in the section we have what? We have this URL, which is really not useful to what we want to do. What we want to do is something like what? Let's the URL might look like what? Let's see. The URL might look like something like this: HTTP localhost 4000, and then API. Well, the student presumably is already logged in, right? And so we have the student in the session at the server. I shouldn't have to pass in the student ID, right? Ideally, the client would never need to know the student ID here on this side of the client, right? We do need to pass in the section, and we do need to say that it's an enrollment, okay? So what we could do here is say section, all right? Pass in the section ID, and then the enrollment, right? And enrollment, something like that, right? So this could be interpreted as in here are the sections, all the sections, and then if you give me the ID, is that particular section, and then all the enrollments in that section. Okay. So let's do that. Let's so that this would look like a post, right? So this would be a return, fetch, and to the URL, and then we're going to configure it saying that this is going to be a post. So this would be a post. So this would be a method. Would be a post, right? Also, we want to participate in the same session, right? If we're already logged in. Use the same cookie that you already have. Right, so we're going to also pass in the credentials. The same cookie that the server passed us earlier. We're going to pass the same cookie so that it knows that it's still us. What else do we need? Do we need anything else? I don't believe we need anything else. So let's make this a constant, because it's not changing. All right, let's try it out. If we clear that out and we say enroll, notice that the server's complaining, saying that there is no post section something other enrollment, right? That means that the server needs to be modified, needs to be able to respond to this event happening on the client. So let's work on that. Let's copy that URL, and now let's move over to the server. Now on the server, we need a service to handle that, right? And I think we already have a service to handle sections. We already have that here, right? So let's handle it right there. Let's see. It would look like let's copy the URL. It looks something like this. So it's going to be a post. So app.post, and that's the URL. And we're going to change this a little bit. There we go. As a parameter, section ID will be a parameter that we're going to parse from the path, and we're going to call it. We're going to use the same exact name we're going to use on the client, enroll student in section, so that we can keep it straight in our heads. And this will be function enroll student, and this is request.response. So these two functions, right? The enroll student in section running on Angular is the client version, right, that is sending the request, and on the server we have the mirror image that is answering that request, right? So these are two pieces of code, both written in JavaScript, but one is running on the browser and one is running on the server in Node.js. Yes, right? They just happen to be on either side of this expanse called the World Wide Web. All right, so let's see. Let's grab the section ID. The section ID, we'll grab it from the parameters, so request, params, and it's a map, so you can either use the square bracket notation, or in JavaScript you can treat it as if it were an object. So you can use the dot notation as well, right? Whichever you prefer as for your syntax. All right, so once we have the section ID, we can actually now enroll. But notice that the section model doesn't have any of that, right? The section model deals with sections, right? It doesn't really deal with enrollments, right? The enrollments really is part of some other model, right? So perhaps this could have lived either here, right, or could have lived in a service that handles specifically enrollments, right? Since this is a relationship between two, it could live on either one. Right, it could live on either one, but let's leave it here. But it doesn't need to manipulate enrollments, right? It needs to create a new instance of an enrollment. It needs to insert a new record saying that this student is enrolled in that section. Okay? All right, so I have the section ID. I need what now? I need the student ID. Okay, and we can grab that presumably from the user who has just logged in. Okay, so we can grab the user from a current user. Presumably that is in the session, so it's session.currentUser. We have the current user, so we could grab the user ID from the current user. So current user dot underscore ID. Okay, so we have everything we need to actually create an enrollment. Right? So let's we would need a model for this, right? We would need to say something like, hey, enrollment model, dot create enrollment, right? Create enrollment. And we would pass in maybe the student ID who's enrolling, or user ID, and the section ID. Okay, maybe a better name for this would be student ID. And maybe we should follow the same naming convention. But we don't have any of this, right? We don't have this enroll students in section. We don't even have an enrollment model. We have an enrollment schema, right? We know where we're going to store this, right? But we're not using it anywhere, right? So we don't even have an enrollment model. So let's leave it here for a second. So for now, just to check to see that it's working, let's create an enrollment object and let's echo it back to the client to see if it's at least working, right? So this is an enrollment. So the object might be student. Student would be the student ID. And the section would be the section ID. And let's echo it back to the client. We're going to say response dot JSON sent back the enrollment object. There we go. All right. So let's restart the server. And let's go back and let's refresh this. Now that I'm not logged in anymore, right? Because I restarted the server. So the server doesn't know who I am anymore. So I'm going to go back home and I'm going to log in again as po and po just to establish a session, right? So I'm going to log in and then try to enroll here. I'm going to clear this out and click on enroll here. It still gives us a 404. Post. Let's see. Post. Oh, maybe I don't need all this, all right? Let me try it again. Let's restart the server. And let's put a breakpoint here. See if we can make it to the server. Restart again. Log in. Enroll here. Let's clear that. Enroll. All right, so we made it to the server. Right, so the API now is correct. And let's see what we get here. We can step through this. Let's put a breakpoint right here, see if the object gets created. If we hover over enrollment, notice that we have a student ID and we have a section ID, right, ready to be inserted into the database. Right? So this is going to be echoed. And if we go back to the client, notice that this is the data that is being echoed from the server. Right? It's ready to be inserted in the database, right, into that particular schema, into that particular model. But we don't have a model, right? So let's create the model where we want to insert it. All right, so back on the server, we would like to be able to do this, right? But we don't have that. Let's see. We have a schema. We have a schema so far that has a section which is going to be an ID. The student is going to be an ID. The grade is going to be a string. Also, we should configure here the name of the collection we want to use. Otherwise, we're going to use a default name that we're either going to like or not. I prefer to choose exactly what I want the name of the collection. We'll call it enrollments. Enrollments. Do we have enrollments? I don't believe we have enrollments. So we can say show collections. We only have sections and users, right? We don't have enrollments. All right, so we have a schema. Let's create a model. Let's create a model here. So new JavaScript, and this will be enrollment dot model dot server.js. And in here we'll load Mongoose, right? We'll load the schema. We'll create the model for the enrollment, and we'll create several functions that allow us to manipulate that model. Yes. So let's grab the Mongoose. So this is require Mongoose. We'll grab the schema as well. So this will be the enrollment schema. And that's in the same directory. There it is. And what else do we need here? We need to create the actual model. So var will be enrollment model. We'll register it. We'll say Mongoose, and then create model. And this takes as argument takes the name of the model. So enrollment model. You can use any string as long as you're consistent all throughout. And then it also takes as argument the schema that we want to validate this model against, right? So every time we update, insert, or do anything with this schema, it will be validated against that schema, okay? All right, so what are we going to do? So we want to implement that one function. Where is it? This one, enroll students in section, right? So this will be it will be a function. and it will be called enroll students in section. And presumably we already have an enrollment object. Right? We just created it before that follows the structure of this. Right? It already is in the correct JSON configuration. It's already pre-populated. We already have a section. We already have a student ID in there. Right? The only thing we don't have is a grade. So we might need to come back later, right, when we know a grade and update the grade, right? Maybe at the end of the semester, perhaps, right? Right. So here in enrollment, the only thing we need to do is just insert that object. It's already built for us. Right? We don't need to do anything. We could have instead here, instead of expecting an object already created, we could have accepted maybe the student ID and the section ID and build the object here. We could have done that. But here we were just passing it. So really the only thing we need to do is actually insert it, right? So we're going to do the enrollment model dot create, and we're just going to insert that JSON object, yes? And what's this going to return is a promise. And what that promise will resolve in is the actual new enrollment object having been inserted, right, with its own underscore ID and whatnot, okay? All right, we're going to need to export this. So this will be module that exports, and it's going to export an API. That's our API for now, right? And we'll add new things as we need to. All right, so in the service, right, this enrollment model, we need to load it, right? We need to require it, just like we did the section model. We'll require from the same directory in models, enrollment, and then enrollment model. There it is, right? We loaded it, and now we can call that, right? We can call that enrollment model right here, right? So now we can uncomment that, and instead of passing the student ID or the section ID, I already have the object already created. Yes, already created, so I can now register for a callback when the database is done. And the database presumably will come back with an enrollment object, enrollment, and we can send it back to the client, right? If the client cares, right? So we're just going to say response dot send back the actual enrollment that came back from the database. All right, everybody okay? All right, so let's try it out. Let's restart the server. On the client, I believe. We don't need to do anything on the client. I believe it's already sending it, although the client's not really doing anything with what's coming back from the server. Right now it's just echoing it, right, and just printing it out to the console. So let's try it out. Let's we'll need to log in now, right, because otherwise it won't know because we just restarted the server. So let's go back and log in. Home, and then enroll in 5610. Let's enroll here. Notice that it went out. It came back. That doesn't look right. It's echoing. Oh, okay. Notice that we were sending the JSON back too early, right? But we did have this part. So probably it actually did insert. Right? So it sent back the response, but it also went out to the database. So probably it's already in the database. Let's try it out. Let's go in Mongo and show the collections. And indeed, we already now we do have an enrollments collection that was not there originally. So we can take a look at it now. Enrollments. And notice that indeed we are storing the student ID and the section ID of the enrollment. Right? Notice that the object is not there. So if we would want the object, we would need to perhaps join somehow, right, in a figurative speech, join this enrollment table or this enrollment collection with either the student collection or the section collection, right? If we want any information about the section, any information about the student. So let's take a look at how we could do that.